Hi, everybody. We're back with Off the Highway, and I'm going way off the highway today with Lisa Sharon Harper. She's the director of mobilization for Sojourners, and she's also the author of a great new book called Forgive Us: Confessions of a Compromised Faith. Lisa, you love Jesus, as I understand. Is that true?
That is very true.
And you think Jesus is the hope of the world?
I do, yes.
So, let me ask you this: why are we dedicating so much of our time to issues of social justice when really we should be spending our time just in introducing people to Jesus? Isn't that the way we should be spending our time?
Mm. Well, here's the deal, is that when
Yes.
Jesus came and walked the earth, the very first sermon Jesus ever gave was actually in Luke 4. And when he gave his first sermon, it's basically like, if you think of it like Jesus' inaugural address, where he says, "This is what I stand for, this is what I've come for." What he said in that inaugural address was, he actually quoted Isaiah 61. He opened up the scroll in the middle of the synagogue, and he said, "This is," he read from the scroll. In the scroll it said, "I have come, I've been anointed to proclaim good news for the oppressed, for the poor, for the ones who are weeping, for the ones who are imprisoned." Basically saying, this is your day when you're going to be set free. And he said, "I've come to proclaim the day of the Lord's favor," which in biblical terms we know is a direct reference to the year of Jubilee. All of these things are things that are actually looking directly at Jewish law and at the way that God established what God's intent for the world was. And this is the intent of a just world. Jubilee was an economic reversal. Jubilee was the moment when debt would be set free. And it's not spiritual debt that he was talking about. He's actually talking about debt, like as in, like in the year of Jubilee, people who had debt over the last 49 years would have that debt, booms, a reset button, and they would be able to return to the land of their ancestors, and there would never be poverty in perpetuity in a family. In terms of imprisonment, they were dealing, at that very moment when Jesus said that, they were dealing with a Roman occupation where people who had any thought against the Roman occupiers were being put in prison as political prisoners. They were dealing with extreme poverty. In Jesus' own hometown of Nazareth and in the surrounding area of Galilee, there was major poverty going on and oppression. Blood running in the streets, as some historians have talked about, from the ways of the oppressors of the Romans. So Jesus opening up the scroll and reading that and saying, it is the oppressed ones that actually are going to be the oaks of righteousness, the ones that proclaim the year of God's favor, and the ones who restore the devastations of many generations. Jesus wasn't just speaking highfalutin talk. Jesus said, "This is why I've come." And guess what? Me reading this right now, this is the fulfillment of the scripture that I'm reading. So in other words, it's on. So what Jesus said about Jesus' own walk on this earth and own time on this earth was actually far, far greater than just my relationship with God. It included that for sure, but it also addressed and included the reconciliation of all things, including the systems that govern us, to the people who are being governed. And you can also see it in Jesus' very last sermon, Matthew 25, where he talks about the sheep and the goats, and he says in the end, there's going to be guys on the left and guys on the right, and girls on the left, girls on the right. And the big dividing question is going to be, what did you do to me when I came to you and I was hungry and thirsty and naked and an immigrant and all of the and in poverty? So and imprisoned? What did you do? And that word, when he says the righteous will say, hey, when did we do this for you, Jesus? That word righteous means just ones. It means the just ones will say. And if you parse it even more, it means those of equitable action and character. You can't talk about equity without talking about the way things work. So what Jesus is actually saying in that last passage, his last sermon, is those who ask the question of how is there an inequitable distribution of food in our town? Who is getting the short end of the clean water in our city, the city of Rome? Who is getting the short end of welcome in terms of immigrants in the Roman Empire? On and on. And he's looking at how things are working. So it's pretty hard when we look at the words of Jesus himself. Jesus actually places himself in the full spectrum of history, of the full spectrum of the canon of Scripture. And he himself actually says, my concern is not only for the spiritual wellness of humanity, but also for the wellness of us between each other and the wellness of us between people and the systems that govern them. So, why am I concerned with Ferguson? Why am I concerned with immigration reform? Why am I concerned about climate change? It's because Jesus himself was concerned about hunger and thirst. Jesus himself was concerned about immigration policy in Rome. Jesus himself was concerned about who is getting the short end of the stick when it comes to policies that either impoverish or help the image of God to flourish on earth.
Thank you, Lisa. Like my friend Ken Lloyd says in the Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread. Until we define who the us is, the prayer means nothing. And so thank you so much for those thoughts, everybody. That is Lisa Sharon Harper. She's the author of Forgive Us, Confessions of a Compromised Faith. Thanks for being here, Lisa.
Thank you. It's been great.